Thank you very much for the kind invitation, Richard. Thank you also very much for allowing me not to wear a tie this afternoon. So I'm going to give you something that I hope is, and I don't want to bore anyone, part science lesson, part inspiration, and perhaps, as we like to say, the demonstration gods are willing, I'd like to show you something that my guess is most people in the room have never seen and been exposed to, and that's wireless electricity that's completely safe, efficient, and works over a distance. One of the thoughts that we had when I first contacted Richard about speaking to you today was, could a technology that's so revolutionary potentially leapfrog into an area of the world where the technology was not previously available? And there are other examples like this in cell phones and that sort of thing as well. So this invention of wireless electricity came from MIT, invented by a professor who got tired of listening to his wife's cell phone run out of battery power every night and wake him up. And as he lay there, he's too nice to wake his wife up and ask where the charger was. What he ended up doing was thinking about, with all the electricity that runs around in the walls, couldn't some of that just go in the phone to take care of charging the telephone? And he actually figured it out in his head, which is really kind of an amazing thought to me, who's more of a technologist business person, but he actually figured out something that had eluded scientists for over 180 years. And that's how to exchange electricity completely safely. Of course, like a lot of scientific breakthroughs, no one believed him, even though his research proved it. What he did discover, though, is if he proved it to people, there's an opportunity. And so what you see up there in the picture is the first public demonstration, and just to put that up there, you'll see a team of people, the professor's in the middle. There's a light bulb at the right that's 60-watt light bulb being lit from a distance of 2 meters away. And you'll see coils, and if it looks like it's made from a refrigerator tubing, it's made from refrigerator tubing. And that oscillates at a particular frequency and transferred the energy over a distance of 2 meters. By the way, everyone in that picture is alive because I work with all of them. And how does this type of thing work? And let me see if I can describe it to you very briefly, and then what I'm going to do is show you. But if you can get an object to oscillate in space, and let's just say that and those are stylized examples of it, but a coil, if you put electricity on it, you'll create a magnetic field. By the way, magnetic fields are very safe for human beings. We live in a magnetic field. The things I'll show you in a few moments have about the same intensity as the Earth's magnetic field. So if you're okay living on the Earth, you ought to be okay with this technology. But if you can get this object to oscillate at a certain frequency and create another object that recognizes just that frequency, you can exchange magnetic energy and then turn it back into electricity again. It's got some very, very profound benefits, and I just want to describe these to you. First is that if you create these objects, if they oscillate in space, you can vary their distance and orientation. Those of you that may have a technical background, this is very unlike traditional magnetic induction. Another benefit of it is that you can place multiple objects in the field, and it will actually transfer energy between all of those. They can be very different sizes as well. And then finally, usually when people see the demonstration that I'm about to show you, they'll ask the question, how far can you go? And actually, it's based on the size of the objects. So maybe you'd say, well, my cell phone, I can't make it any bigger, but I'd like to go farther. Well, it's actually possible to create passive objects that also recognize the frequency, and if you place those in the field, you can couple energy over very strong distances, very long distances. So when you think about what are the applications that are possible, and you know, coming from the US, we tend to think of all of the consumer electronics and industrial products and things like that that we have, but whether they're consumer electronics, charging of electric cars, medical devices that are implanted inside the human body, robotics, solar energy, lighting. When you start to look at all of those, the thought came to a number of us back in Boston that would it be possible to use this as a leapfrog technology? And I have to say, my original thought came on Christmas Day in 2010. This was an article on the front page, I think it was of the business section, but I saved it, and it talked about that electricity and where it's available, and it specifically talked about what's available or not in Africa. And I've had the fortunate opportunity to travel around to a number of places, but when you actually look at the statistics, and I won't bore you with all of them, but just look at sub-Saharan Africa for penetration of electricity, and you'll see that the number's around 14% compared to sort of 60+% for the world. If there were a way to get electricity to people that don't have it today in sort of their homes and over what we'll refer to as room-scale distances, this potentially could be a life-changing experience. By the way, those of you that were sitting here a little bit earlier didn't see, but the power flickered in the other rooms as well momentarily. And while the fellow from Florida said we can live without electricity, I'd contend that actually most people get pretty frustrated if the juice goes out. Another thing, if you ever just look around, light is so important to people that you actually have all around the world students who have no other alternative but to study under street lamps. And that's utilizing that light, so they have to leave their home or be out late into the night to be able to study. But it's that important for education to have light. This is a picture of a village I had a chance to visit in Kenya a couple of years ago. And what struck me about this was, how on earth, if we wanted to get electricity in that room, could we ever do that? You know, if you wanted to put it inside there, how would that be possible? It couldn't support an outlet and those types of things that you traditionally see. So I wanted to combine three things and show you some things. First is the widespread use of cell phones. The second is the proliferation of relatively low-cost solar energy. And then finally, very efficient LED lighting, and show you all of those things sort of operational. I want to start, though, because I'd like to just show you sort of how it works. So here's a small tablet or something like that. I'm going to use a battery, by the way, to power it. So, and I'll try to show you something that sort of demonstrates it pretty well. So inside here is a coil of wire. It's not that difficult. There's a battery powering it, and it's oscillating at a high frequency. And here's an object, an LED light source, that you'll see when I place it up. Look at the distance that works. It's a little bit hard, perhaps, for you to see that. But by the way, completely safe. Doing that and transferring the energy through my head is actually 100 times safer than making a cell phone call. And you'll see that these objects allow you to do things like get light to work over distance. So for example, but you remember how I said people usually want to go further? So let's say, for example, that I want to do this. You'll see when he gets over here, he stops, he starts dying. He won't work any further. And I could make the light bigger, but I could also create a passive object and place it in between so that you'll see you're actually able to hop over distances that are quite interesting. So let's take this to sort of how you might actually operate this in a home that doesn't have access to electricity. So I'm going to start with a solar panel. By the way, it actually gets enough light in here to generate electricity, although I'll apologize for powering it from a small battery here. And if you remember that object that I showed you a moment ago, here's a little can. So it's got a coil and electronics in it as well. And what I'm going to do is connect that up to the solar panel and the battery. So imagine this is outside your home. And you want to place this inside your home. And then what we're going to do, because remember in that hut that I showed you, you can't easily get electrical wiring in there. So what I'm going to do is place those coils, if you will, in the base of a regular piece of carpeting. And just to sort of show you that it works over a distance, we'll do a few of them. By the way, I think we could keep doing this and continue across the stage. But let's suppose for a moment that what we did is took the lamp, the floor lamp, and we put one of those coils in the base of the floor lamp. And then remember, the source of the electricity is coming from here, and it will hopefully hop through the carpeting to get light all the way across the room. So imagine if you could, inside your home, literally outfit this and place this anywhere. And by the way, if you're concerned about the cost, because I heard Mr. De Niro mention money, this probably costs on the equivalent of pennies to implement. It's a coil of wire with a capacitor. It's resonant at those frequencies and allows you to do that. But you remember I talked about cell phones a moment ago. So I'd like to show you another example of it. Let's suppose we put it into the furniture. So there's a coil underneath there. And I looked it up, but the most popular cell phone in Africa today is the Nokia 6300. So imagine that you would create a small coil like this. It wouldn't have to even be in your cell phone, but suppose that you wanted to be able to charge all the cell phones, because that was the other thing that was in this article from the New York Times, how people have to drive or bicycle long distances to go to a place where they could charge their cell phone. So let's imagine that that little object is resonant, and this just sits out in the middle of the village, or I guess it could be inside at night, and everybody could just, without any wires, leave their cell phones, just on this stand. And then we place this object up here, and if you can see down there, all three of those cell phones just lit up and they're charging. So imagine this, wireless power, completely safe, it's highly efficient, and it works over incredible distances. And just think for a moment of the types of things that this could do to help change the society in places where electrical wiring and infrastructure is not always available. So that's what I had to say today. Thank you very much. One more thing I did want to mention. We discussed this with Richard, and we're donating the system to the Gabonese government so that if they'd like to show this as a future inspiration to the types of things that could be done, we're very happy to do that. So thank you again.